How strong is the national resistance compared to IS? How many IS fighters do you estimate exist in Iraq? Do you have an idea of the size of foreign elements in IS in Iraq? Has IS attracted many Iraqis to join? And maybe it could be combined with this question: why are the tribal revolutionaries so silent? The last message from General Kaisi was in June in an interview by Al Jazeera.
Yeah.
I think we take those two for you, and the other is another kind of question.
I think the picture is quite blurred in Iraq. It's not clear because of far too many forces are playing now on the ground. We have regional forces, we have the US also. I mean, what I didn't mention probably previously is also there are the Iranian forces active on the ground. And the Iranian forces, it used to be like rumors before. We don't want to talk about it because we think this is a country being targeted by America, and for the leftist people, we better not mention it. It's anti-imperial war and the whole stuff. And there were no really filming or real documentation which we can prove the credibility of these forces there. But recently, in the last 2-3 months, and since some major battles took place in Iraq in various places, suddenly we've noticed that the Iranian government itself is promoting its role in these battles and showing very good photos to show how they are taking part, and especially a person called Soleimani, who is the leader or the head of the Quds brigade. He took part in the Iraq-Iranian war himself, being promoted, and he is very influential figure in the military, in the forces, the Iranian forces. So it's a lot of photos coming out of it. He's posing with the pro-Iraqi militias. He's working with them, in fact, and there are a few of the battles which he led himself. So this is one of the significant changes in the matter. We used to hear rumors about it, but we never wanted to believe it. It's becoming now as a fact on the ground that forces like that fighting. The resistance, which was very clear when there was the US combat forces on the ground and the Iraqi resistance fighting in a fierce way against them, it used to be much clearer, the picture. Now with the mix-up of the Iranian other forces from the Gulf area as well, there are some of them interfering, and with ISIS in the picture coming abroad from Syria. And if there is a number, we don't know the exact figures, but there are figures published by newspapers in the Herald Tribune, the CIA giving some of the figures of people from Europe who are joining. The highest figures are people from Tunisia, there are from Algeria, some from Yemen, but again, a lot, or how a lot, we don't know. I mean, how many is they are coming from France, going from Britain and other European countries. And there is a follow-up of women joining also. So there are women leaders. It's not like being rumored around or circulated around in the media. They only been kidnapped and been married to men, like kind of jihad, but are women actively involved in the fight and actively involved in the management of ISIS and other aspects of it. So they are taking part in an active way, also different. So I think these are aspects which should really we look into it and examine also this story. And the main thing is we don't have independent journalism. We don't have it. From the beginning, journalists were targeted and they were silenced. So I think the Americans learned their lesson from previous wars. So either you are embedded, when you are independent, you are targeted. So it's too dangerous for foreign correspondents and journalists to report from there to the international view. It depending all on, they sitting in their offices in various countries and they write from there. So the picture is not clear. And when we talk about ourselves, we report about things happening, we are not believed. Because we are not Americans or British, and we are not international organization. We are only Iraqis. So we are not trusted to be trusted. In fact, it's Iraqis themselves who, to start with, who wrote and talked. We talked about Abu Ghraib prison and the abuses. I myself was one of the first people who, because I was in Iraq, when I met someone who was just released from Abu Ghraib, and he was telling me the story, and I went back and I wrote about it, but it didn't make any difference. They were waiting until the American soldiers showed some of the photos or things, so the source became American rather than Iraqi. So when we cover up all these issues, when we say the figures and things, it's nothing really thing. But also we are really deprived of independent journalism to cover up, to look into it and to write about it and give us the... So it's now all what is there in the media is statements by the Iraqi army, statements by the Iraqi government, or statements by the US officials. This is the coverage, and they can increase and decrease the number of people, whether they are in ISIS or other parts, and they all called terrorists anyway. Whoever fighting is a terrorist. So we don't know who is who and what and how we differentiate it. The defense minister Chekel was asked, and how would you recognize ISIS when you bombard? That was by one of the journalists, and he was asked, and he said, we know them. That was exactly the answer. We know them. So don't ask me any more about this. There is forces now, because of the we have the American forces back and other forces back. The resistance is getting more active, because it is against we are preoccupied. Though, I mean, the withdrawal wasn't complete, but there was a major encouraging step that we are getting rid of the Americans. Despite signing agreements, long-term agreements, there is a strategic agreement which no end whatsoever in it to control everything. But yet, I mean, this is different story now. It is. And the fight is continuous. There are people who are defending Iraqi unity, defending Iraqi sovereignty, economic sovereignty, and the political one, and they are fighting. But there is hardly anything about them in the news. Tribes, some of them are fighting pro-government, others are against it. So they are divided, the tribes, depends. And also don't forget that we have, Iraq is a very rich country, and the budget in the last couple of years is the highest ever that we've seen in the history of Iraq. In fact, the budget, the Iraqi budget, is equal to the 5 countries surrounding Iraq, their budgets put together. So it is extremely rich country with the oil revenue, and the money is in the hands of the governments, mostly. So they are paying whoever, they buying whoever, and they paying it like the billions they found in sacks. They pay to buy public opinion, to buy tribes to fight on their behalf, and to pay whoever. So the resistance is there, but is not as strong as it used to be when there was a direct US occupation. The picture is...
Blackwater?
Blackwater is not back yet. There are security companies working in the green zone to protect the diplomats and all. And there is also talk about the dirty operation or special forces. So they're relying mostly on special forces now to direct kind of operation is and protection is. So there are many forces on the ground and needs to be looked into it. So I hope this is as clear as I can be about this.
Yeah, thank you, Haifa. I think I can add a question to this before the tape, because the last question we have got here written is about the solution as you can see it. But while we are in this question, you talked about this 19 to 25 militias, yes. all that. And if you tell us about the strength and the power and the impunity they have, but also they have the interior minister. Yeah. You talk about that. And also another aspect I'm thinking about, and that is that, the militias, they come, they say they fight ISIL, and then villages, maybe in one place they fight ISIS, and they reappear somewhere else. So it's not that they have, the militias have won, but when they enter a village, there is ethnic cleansing. They are those who lived in the village, and that has happened in many places, they are forced to leave and they become refugees. And this ethnic cleansing started with occupation, but it's really ongoing with the help of the militias.
Yeah, it's. The irony is that when you seek to establish security, is to choose a reliable minister for the interior minister, which is the one should be in control of that. So, but the new Iraqi government got again a unique thing, because they chose as the interior minister. He's one of the leading figures in one of the most atrocious and brutal militias. It's called Badr Brigade, which was established in Iran. And the leader of it, he was the transport minister, and they awarded this militia for its crimes also by appointing one of their leading figures as the Minister of Interior. So he got now all the security forces in his hands, as well as his own militia, which defy any kind of establishing security. And people are already angry about this militia, and they think they have to be really, their leadership has to be held responsible about war crimes. Yet they've been rewarded by being the minister in this government. This is not going to this is not going to establish any security in Iraq at all, and it's not the solution as well. And the militias they are sectarian, they are very powerful, and they can do whatever they like. They threaten people, they kill people, and they escape without being punished. And with such a huge number of them there, it's very, very difficult to believe that this new government going to do is, it's either it can't, even if it is willing, or if it doesn't want to do it, because it's part and parcel of this whole process there. And the Americans are protecting this government. And I mean, not the Americans alone, because they're leading this alliance to protect this government under the pretext of fighting ISIS now. So, and they're selling their arms as well. And we have to bear in mind that the brutality of ISIS should not justify the killing of the rest of the population at all. This is not how things should happen, or how a real solution to Iraqi problems should not be taking this place. And this being condemned by all international human rights organizations and Iraqis. And the other irony is, I was at the United Nations Human Rights Council a couple of months ago, and for a discussion, and the issue was raised about me giving a talk because there was a resolution by the Human Rights Council for the first time since 11 years that there is a resolution to send an envoy to Iraq to look into the crimes, human rights violations in Iraq. But what kind of human rights? It's only since June, the 10th of June this year, when ISIS entered Iraq. These are the crimes they're going to investigate, to look into. So the envoy going to this. What about the years before? What about everything happened all together? Because we've been calling for so many years, and activists and solidarity movement, time after time, asking to send a commissioner to Iraq, to send an envoy to investigate the crimes, but all the crimes. There is talk about massacres. Look into it. Who is responsible about massacres? There are talks about mass graves. Some people say the previous regime killed thousands of people and there are mass graves. Other people say, well, those are Iraqi army soldiers, troops who've been withdrawn from Kuwait and then been buried by the Americans. So these are the mass graves. Others, they say, well, it's the Iran-Iraq war. These are the mass graves. Buried them in all this. Yeah. Others, they say it's the Kurds, and these are the mass graves. Other people saying it's the Americans when we went in and we did not have any place to bury our dead, and I've seen those graves. When they were killed by the Americans, it's like mound, you just put the dust on them. The Americans. In Fallujah, people, they buried their dead in their gardens and football plays. These are mass graves. So in order to look into this issue, which is really absolutely making people traumatized, let's investigate these things. If you're seeking reconciliation among Iraqi people, let's look into all these things. Lead an investigation to these crimes, if there are crimes, and everything else. So instead of doing something useful, the United Nations issued this statement, and they are sending this convoy, which is going to deepen, instead of fighting a solution, deepen the resentment among Iraqi people, because suddenly some people are better. Their crimes are more serious than other people. So it's a dividing element rather than finding the reconciliation. Well, oil was one of the reasons, or one of the main reasons to invade Iraq originally, and it's one of the main reasons, I think, to go back to Iraq now. It's as time passes now, they've been discovered, more and more oil in the Kurdish region is apparently, it is all the latest research and looking into it, and also it's the west of Iraq apparently is covered with minerals and oil, so all of Iraq is sitting on a lake of oil. It's the whole thing. So it's a brilliant prize. Yes. Yeah. So let's finish.
Well, it's really robbery from the Iraqi people. I think, are there any more written questions? Or I have the last question, solution. Can you see it, how it would work? As a solution as you see it.
Solution. I think really, people might differ with me, that we need all the support in solidarity movement now. I think Iraqis themselves alone, we are facing huge powers now and forces, various forces. And when I say it's from the solidarity movement, I mean the people of the countries, European, the Americans, the people who went to the streets in 2003 against the war. But to come out now in a different way, to force their governments to implement different foreign policy and to build relationship with Iraqi people, with Syrian people, with the Yemeni, with the whole Middle East, based on different interest for the people. After all, I mean, in Iraq, even if the US and other European countries are after the oil, I think Iraqis have no intention whatsoever to drink the oil. They want to sell it. They want to, but it has to be not by exploitation or hegemony or invasion or various things. It has to be a relationship built on equal terms, and that is what we're looking for. Equal terms, also not charity, because some people are confusing that with charity. So it's a Christmas time, we give some money to the various organizations, for the orphans, for the kids. We feel good about ourselves, we go back home, it's good, it's finished, and all the stuff. No, it's about what really democracy is about participation, about taking action. And action on behalf, not just about Iraqis, it is about yourselves as well, about the people in these countries. Because sooner or later, what's happening in Iraq, what's happening in Yemen, what's happening in Syria, and we started to see it, really, the danger is coming home, is coming. And we have to work together to put an end to it. And it will happen. Yeah. So, okay. So this is how I see it, and I'm sorry to be too long. Sorry.